Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about David Fincher's films, so there may be spoilers for a lot of his different films. We'll try and keep the spoilers to a minimum though, but just keep it in mind. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John. I'm joined again by Asim to talk about our favorite David Fincher scenes. So we're going to be going through a few of our favorite scenes in David Fincher films, talking about why we love them so much, how they work from a screenwriting point of view, and so on. Before we get into that, if you haven't already, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all the latest stuff that we get up to with our global network of screenwriters. Follow us on social media. You can find the links in the description. And if you haven't already, do subscribe to our podcast. Just search for The Script Department wherever you get your podcasts. And also give this video a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, Asim, I've written out a few films. I've got The Social Network, Zodiac, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and I've put down Mank as well, although I'm not as familiar with that film. I've only seen it once, but there are one or two scenes that kind of stood out to me there that I'll probably clumsily explore. What films have you got?
I got seven. I got I'm actually similar with you in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but also I'm actually interested also in the game as well. There's also the Mindhunter, which is a huge TV series for me, and especially with Dave Fincher and how he changed so many things about how to see a TV series that talks about criminal, but without even seeing any kind of fight scenes, which is huge in terms of dialogue also.
So we'll just kind of go back and forth through the scenes, and when we run out of time, we'll run out of time. I want to start with Zodiac, which I think I personally think I don't think that you mentioned Mindhunter. I don't think there'd be Mindhunter without Zodiac. I think Zodiac is probably one of the most influential detective movies of the 21st century. And I think it's one of the most underappreciated detective movies. I know a lot of people, they love The Social Network, they watch The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, they've watched Mindhunter and all that kind of stuff on Netflix. They've never seen Zodiac. I know so many people who were put off by Zodiac because of the running time. It's a very long film.
Yes.
That to me, though, is a masterclass. I don't think you'd have True Detective. I don't think you'd have any of those very epic, long, and when I say long, I mean like decades-long cases. This is a movie where it's an unsolved case. The unsolved Zodiac killer case. And yet, over the course of this almost 3-hour long film, they don't solve the case.
Yes.
This is a film that doesn't have a solution, but it's done in a way where it makes you feel like they actually solved the case. Like when you come away from that film, you're like, oh wow, that's the Zodiac killer.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes you on so many turns along the way, and it instills just enough doubt that you're thinking, I don't really feel like I know for sure, but I feel like the characters know, and that's enough. And they even reopened the Zodiac case after this film. That's how kind of credible this film is in many ways. But the first scene for me in Zodiac that really stands out is the scene. It's the movie poster scene. Robert Graysmith, I think that's his name, Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, believes that they can find a handwriting sample from the Zodiac at one of the movie theaters where they believe a suspect worked. And so he meets the movie theater owner at his house. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And it's this very creepy kind of the way it's presented, it could almost be like the Norman Bates house and he follows the movie theater owner in. It's this man who claims he lives alone, and yet there's some creaking upstairs, and Jake Gyllenhaal is kind of thinking, do you live alone? And during their conversation, he shows them a poster and he says, oh wow, the handwriting here matches that of one of the suspects, and it isn't totally clear, or at least the way I remember it, it isn't totally clear if the movie theater owner understands the implication of the handwriting sample, because at some point he ends up saying, no, I wrote those posters. Jake Gyllenhaal thinks somebody else wrote the posters, and that's why he's trusting this man. He doesn't believe this man is the killer. And now, in this moment, he's thinking, oh crap, he wrote the posters. Is he the killer? Because it's his handwriting that matches the Zodiac. Oh my God. And it's just, he just starts to kind of freak out a little bit. And but at this point, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is he's so susceptible to suggestion that he goes deeper into the house. So in these houses, in this movie, they say that they believe the Zodiac killer might have a basement, which would be rare in San Francisco, I think, because of the climate or something like that. I'm not too sure. And the man says, well, I've got more posters down in the basement. And Jake Gyllenhaal says this brilliant thing where he goes, there aren't many, you have a basement? There aren't many basements in San Francisco. And then he says, not many people have basements in San Francisco. And then the man goes, well, I do. And then he turns on the light and he brings him down to the basement. And it's just, you're moving into slasher movie territory at that point. And it's almost like just a mini Hitchcock movie. It's like we've just been transported into Psycho for like this brief few minutes. A movie about a serial killer where we never really get to meet the serial killer. We get to meet killers in the movie, but we never feel confident that we're up close, that our hero is being targeted by the, face to face with the killer in a life or death situation. And here's that moment brought to life in almost a comedic way in some respects, because you can tell that the man is having fun with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yes.
And eventually Jake Gyllenhaal, he can hear footsteps upstairs. They're very clearly footsteps. And he says, I thought you said you live alone. And he goes, I do live alone. And eventually Jake Gyllenhaal just makes a run for it. But he can't even get out the door because it's locked. And Fincher uses a mirror really cleverly to show us the reflection of the owner of the house as well. And it's just really, really unnerving. And I think it ends with the man saying, bye, goodbye, Mr. Goodbye, Jake Gyllenhaal, whatever his name is. And he just has this grin on his face as if I think he kind of knows where Jake Gyllenhaal's imagination was going at that point.
And he's toying with him.
And he's just toying with him at that point,
Exactly.
And it's a brilliant, brilliant scene because it's relying on your knowledge of the case. You've been following Jake Gyllenhaal's investigation. You've been following, what's his name, Robert Graysmith. You've been following Robert Graysmith's obsessive investigation, his amateur investigation, and occasionally he'll kind of out loud explain something to his girlfriend, or he'll explain something to his colleagues at work or to his kids or something like that. And so, did you know there's not a lot of basements in, and then suddenly this little piece of information just drops in his lap here, where it's like, it only makes sense because you've been able to recall the previous stuff. Yes. There's another similar scene where it's a very different scene, but it draws on that same kind of genius, which is a group of the detectives have all met. All the different regions that have been affected by the Zodiac killer, all those detectives are coming together to meet with Arthur Lee Allen, I believe is his name, brilliantly played by John Carroll Lynch. And he's working in a factory somewhere or in a plant or something, and he gets called out to sit down, and they meet in this kind of little cafeteria area. And Arthur Lee he's able to kind of it's very casual. It's not an interrogation in the sense of like, tell us where the bodies are or anything like that. It's very much just, where were you on the, well, oh God, I don't know, actually. That's a lovely watch. Can I see that? Yeah, sure. Here, and it's brilliantly done because they don't talk very heavily about his they don't remind you early on, like before the scene. They don't say, okay, well, we need to find out his boot size. We need to find out if he knows anything about the Zodiac kind of symbols or anything like that. It's just very much, let's just have a chat with him. But, they one character kind of takes an interest in his boots and kind of, looks at his shoes. And then another character kind of follows the eye line and sees the shoes as well and starts thinking, okay, maybe these shoes look like they're the same brand as the ones we're looking for. And then he sees the watch and he says, can I see your watch? He gives him the watch and there's the Zodiac symbol on the watch, and he hands it over to one of his colleagues, and the colleague his eyes just open wide, And all of it has value. It's this brilliant interrogation scene where there's only one moment, I think, where Arthur Lee becomes really offended. Or even then, I don't think he gets that offended, but it's just this brilliantly calm scene. And yet, there's so much information coming out of it in terms of like interrogation.
Yes.
And more than that, it's those two scenes combined perfectly embody what makes that film so brilliant, I think, and what makes Fincher such a brilliant director. Like Nolan, he understands that audiences aren't stupid. Audiences have memory, and they can retain information that they heard 30 minutes ago or an hour ago.
Exactly.
And It doesn't spoon feed you. It doesn't use flashes. It doesn't do any of the kind of stuff that they would do in a 40-minute episode of CSI or something like that.
Yes.
It's so intelligent. This is a 30-year, investigation, it seems. It feels like, anyway, in this movie, or, 20-year investigation or whatever. I mean, it's definitely not 30 years. I think, 20 years maybe max. Is it 30 years? Yeah, something like that. It's very, very long. We're spanning decades here. And information gets lost. It gets forgotten about. But they know that the audience isn't going to forget that information.
Exactly.
And it's just a great example of how to write scenes that respect your audience. You don't have to spoon feed information, or anything like that. You don't have to just constantly remind us of information or anything. It's So I'm a big fan of Zodiac. I think it's the film that really made me appreciate Fincher as a master storyteller, because he knows how to tell that story. And all the credit in the world as well to James Vanderbilt, the screenwriter, who's done some really interesting stuff in his career. He's done some really kind of cool films, but he's also done films like Independence Day 2 and Welcome to the Jungle, which are pretty pretty basic, Hollywood movies. I mean, no disrespect, but it's just, they're a far cry from the complexity of Zodiac and the masterful screenwriting techniques that are in Zodiac.
Yeah, I mean, there's this kind of, I noticed that David Fincher have his kind of a print, let's say, like a fingerprint, like what you describe about the scene in the Zodiac with the basement. It's almost similar in terms of the same thing happened in Mindhunter when, when our FBI agent, Holden Ford, it's and the actor was Jonathan Grove, actually went to meet Ed. Ed, the very famous serial killer, and how he's going to meet him, and what kind of authorization he have, and his friend, and Bill Trench told him that he's a 6'9", he's 300 pounds, he's going to kill you. He said, what's he going to do with a gun? He said, he's going to take a gun, he's going to kill you, and he's going to do something else with your head, because that's what happened with his previous victims. And when he went to the police, when he went to do the interrogation, the first thing we see that he is stripped out of his authority, his badge, his gun. Now he is nothing. So whatever he's doing, he's going to be face to face with Ed, and he's going to be in a very tight situation where he's going to die if he's going to do any kind of movement. And it's also similar in terms of how they did the investigation with Arthur. Like we said, they didn't go and ask him what happened. He was explaining to them what's the enjoyment, how he's doing it. And Ed was really toying with, with the FBI agent, because he knows that he's terrified from it. He already know that what he did previously. So there's this huge of things about you as an audience as well. You're just waiting for that moment where Ed is going to snap, the FBI agent neck, because it's simple. And we see that from the angles and how he's towering the FBI agent, and it was just beautiful to see that kind of investigation. And it's based on the true investigation that happened, and they played the videos and all that, and how it's so similar. But how you explain to people without even showing the real crime, it's how your actor will enact it. But when he went to him and he said, well, I was cutting her throat from left to right, and he was doing that on the FBI agent, and he can sense that the FBI agent said, okay, this is my time, I'm gonna die. So it's similar. I mean, I like how that kind of being like a fingerprint for for Fincher, how he's doing this kind of crimes, and these kind of scenes where every movie you will notice that this is Fincher. This is Fincher. It's not anyone else. This is Fincher. This is how he does his movie. Like what Nolan is doing. This is Fincher. This is how Woody Allen's doing his movie. This is how Scorsese is doing. So each one of them have his special style in terms of how to tell the storytelling. And it's the same thing happened with the girl with the dragon tattoo, when he actually taking Mikhail to the basement where he almost died. So when you see it, there is this kind of, it's not a repetition, but it's his way of telling stories. And I think he have some kind of love to basements. That's why there's, he noticed that, right?
But it's funny actually, because when I was thinking about Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, I was trying to think, I was torn between different scenes, and one scene that I was going to talk about was that basement scene. Yeah. Was that the one you wanted to talk about?
No, for me, I had another one, but it reminded me about the...
No, because just the thing I love about that scene is they start playing Enya, Sail Away, I think, or Orinoco Flow, I think, is it?
Yeah.
And it's just, this totally disarming song, where this is a song that, should be putting you at ease.
Yes.
Or should be almost like a meditative experience. I don't think anybody has ever made the associated an Enya piece of music with a serial killer moment.
Yes.
And Fincher does that. Like that's Fincher's ability, and he does that brilliantly in Zodiac as well. That combination of music, I think, Hurdy-Gurdy Man at the beginning. I mean, I don't know what that song is about, but you could, I don't know, you could see, okay, Hurdy-Gurdy Man could be a weird name for a serial killer or something. I don't know, but it's just that connection, that use of music to really bolster those moments. You're right. Actually, I never thought of Fincher's. I mean, Fincher's done so many serial killer things over the years, so many serial killer TV shows and movies over the years. But I don't identify him as, like, I identify Scorsese as the gangster guy.
Yeah.
I never associated Fincher as the serial killer guy, even though Alien 3 is a serial killer movie. It just happens to be a monster.
Yes.
It is, 7, obviously. The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Zodiac, Mindhunter. It's incredible, actually. The kind of the recurring themes that come out, the recurring ideas. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And also the kind of genre, he's really, some kind of way, he's really into it. The mysterious, the thriller, the crime, and it's not your typical ones. It's much more about how to connect the dots, how to, see where things are going, not in a typical police kind of work, but it's much more about the detective style. But it's kind of Fincher way of style, how he's especially with the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He's a detective journalist. He's not a detective. So,
and even his next film that's in production right now is called The Killer. I don't know what it's about, but that actually, I mean, I imagine the title gives us a pretty big clue there. And he's also doing a Chinatown prequel.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, which I imagine will also be very heavily detective inspired. Will have a very, old school detective kind of a structure to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's moving away from that genre anytime soon.
Because to be honest with you, this is where he shines most. I think this is where I see that he's putting everything he know, and it makes so much sense about how he's doing it. If we see Gone Girl, it's not about it's not about a serial killer, but it's also about disappearing. It's about thriller. It's about mystery. So I think that's his genre, that he's always into it and he want to play with it. And I respect that, because one of the things that he said, and it's so obvious in a scene from Seven, the bar scene. David Fincher has this thing about, I don't want any of my characters to change, and I want none of them to be right. So each one of them is right in his own way, And there's this scene in the bar between Brad Pitt, Somerset, and also Miles, that they're talking about how can this kind of killer become, like, is it from society, is it from is it from economy, what shaped him to be like this? And Somerset, which is played by the great Morgan Freeman, said it's about the society, it's about this, and we should be careful. And he was like more as a mentor, he was wise. And then Miles, the arrogant Brad Pitt in his youth, he said, no, I don't really agree with you. Does that mean that I'm gonna shut down myself? I'm gonna be quiet. I don't want to change. So he's like the opposite. Instead of trying to play with the rules, he want to break them. And you see, everyone is trying to prove that himself is the right choice, or what he's saying is the right thing. And they actually, part ways. And we understand that each one of them is still holding his idea, his concept. From the first time, from the movie until the end, none of them change, and that's, I think, one of the things about David Fincher, that he doesn't want his character to change, like what we see in a character's journey. He needs something, he wants something, and we see that he's changing along the way. Maybe there's a small change, but it's not the change that you will see it for the long run. It's just a small change, maybe, that's it. But that scene embodies that coat that he actually have.
So I chose not to do Seven because I think I would get lost in a conversation about Seven forever. I think the whole episode would just become about that movie. Yeah. That's one movie where that literally made me pause. Like I saw Seven on DVD for the first time. I didn't. That was how I saw the film the first time.
Yes.
And I remember watching it, and it's when without getting too heavily into spoilers of the show, but there's a character in it that you think is dead, and he's not dead. And when the revelation, that he's alive happens, I had to pause the movie and just get up and walk out of the room for a few minutes.
Yes.
It was just, I just thought, I have no idea what's going to happen next in this movie. This movie is rewriting my brain in terms of everything I think I know about detective movies.
Yes.
And it was, real masterclass in storytelling. A very, very grim film, though. Yeah. I do not want to live in that city. Am I right in thinking that the city in Seven is a nameless city? That it could be any place. Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely something unidentifiable about that city, which I love. I mean, he really a master filmmaker. Okay, so we'll go back to me, or did you want to do another scene? Or?
I think one of the scenes that I love about the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I know it's not. It's the confrontation between Mikhail, which is played by Daniel Craig, and the actor, it's her character name is Anita Wagner, Jolie Richardson. When they found her at last, and I think this is after the scene of the basement where he was almost killed, and then Lisbon or Rooney actually helped him. And the way she was telling the story about how she run away and how she changed her name and why she's doing it, and you see that the character Mikhail, which is played by Daniel, he's not saying no when she killed her father, because she killed her father, and he didn't say, "Oh my God, you need to tell the police." He didn't do that. It's okay, you did it, he deserved it. I'm with you. So it's like, oh my God, this is great. You don't see him trying to stop her from continuing the story because he is with her on this time. And the way we are seeing that kind of scene elevate from one predator to the other, from the father to the son, or to the brother, then where he actually almost killed Mikhail or Daniel. It shows so much about the lineage, and that storytelling, and how the grandfather needs to find his granddaughter to make sure that she's alive, and that's his only thing that he wants to do. And the way they shot the scene, Daniel Craig on the left, and in the middle there's this kind of fountain. It shows so much about how they are separated, not just from each other, but also from the world. The scene, how it's shot and how the angle was, it was just beautiful to see it, because it also tells that Mikhail also had been out of this world, out of his own life. So it's like they are similar in terms of how they lost their families and how they are actually convicted.
I love it for a different reason. I love it because that scene is a great example of adaptation done well. It actually changes the ending dramatically from the book. So in the book, they go to Australia and they find the person they're looking for, and they've started a new life for themselves in Australia. And in the Swedish film, they do the same thing. But I always remember in the Swedish film it feeling very jarring. In a novel, I think a trip that big can work, but in the film, you can't send your characters to Australia for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, and then have them come back again. That's a huge journey that needs more time in the film, in terms of pacing and stuff like that. And James Bond doesn't hop around the world that quickly, and so I thought that was a big error in the Swedish film. It was an example of just being too faithful to the source material, without thinking about how it might translate into a visual medium. And Fincher, ever the genius, understood that, and again, credit to Steve Zalian as well, the writer, understood that, well, no, we're going to have to keep this closer to home. We can't send our characters to Australia. Like, that's just such a departure from the aesthetic of the film and everything like that. And so they either go to London or they go to Stockholm. I can't remember where.
Stockholm.
Stockholm. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if she actually left the country entirely or if she just went to the capital. Yeah, she goes to Stockholm and they find her there. But it's also not a new character. They've conflated her character with somebody else's, and I think she just changed her name, I think. And it's just a brilliant simplification of something that wasn't going to work very well. But Fincher, he knew that, and Zalian knew that as well.
Yeah, when Fincher actually read the novel, he said that this is not going to be a 3-act structure. It's going to be very hard to adapt it into a feature film. And then Steven actually took it, and they did, instead of the 3 acts, they say, okay, we're going to do a new thing, which is a 5-act. And they did it. And each scene is also a 3-act structure. So it was really beautifully done. And I think that's why a lot of people, even if seeing it for the second or third time, they still enjoy it. Although it's like a detective, but still there is a lot of about the characters. You don't have just Mikhail, which is played by Daniel, but also you have Lisbon, which is played by Rooney. She also become the protagonist. So there's this kind of changing of being a protagonist from one to the other, and exploring the B story and exploring the subplots better than just focus on the main plot, because the main plot is very easy. Your mission is to do this and this and this, but the subplot, how can you do it? And I think that's one of the reasons that made it so much appealing to even watch it in the cinemas. And actually, I bought the comic book, and it is frame by frame similar to the film. And I think what I believe that the comic came after the film, the movie, and that there's the different comics for the same writer for the original novel. So I'm just waiting for them to do the other novels.
I was so disappointed when I found out Fincher wasn't going to do a sequel to The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, because I think one of the reasons why it didn't happen is because there was a lot of backlash, because so many people loved the Swedish adaptations. I didn't like them. They were originally, I think, a limited series that were then edited together into a film. I think it was called Millennium, and then it was edited into into 3 films then for theatrical release. But I think in Sweden it was released as a kind of as a limited run called Millennium. Now, they are definitely very good, but they feel very televisual. They don't. I never felt like they were works of cinema. I felt like they were just live action interpretations of live action replicas of the movie. I think Noomi Rapace is brilliant as Lisbeth Salander. And I love Claire Foy's run in The Girl and the Spider's Web. I love that film as well. I think there's some great stuff in that film as well. Big fan of that one. I would love to see more film. I would love to see a new film each time. Do the James Bond franchise, but for The Girl with Dragon Tattoo, right?
Yes.
But do a different actor every single time. Don't have 5 movies with one actor and then 5 movies or whatever. Just have a different actor every single time. Put their spin on this character, who I think is one of the most interesting characters to come out of television, literature, and so on, film for such a long time. So I really love Fincher's version of it. I thought it was the cinematic, the ultimate cinematic adaptation, I think, of it. And that opening title sequence is amazing. Just on Girl with Dragon Tattoo, there was one other scene that I really love, that I think is a great example of, if you're paying attention, you'll see it. And that's when we meet the killer for the first time. Mm-hmm. So they go to, obviously in a whodunit, you're always going to meet the killer early on. The killer will always be standing right in front of you and you don't realize it. And in this film, there's a moment where Daniel Craig is invited to the house of somebody for on the island for wine and food, and he's sitting there and he meets the man and he meets the wife and all that, and you can hear this scream in the kind of off camera, and then he gets up and he closes the door, and you realize, oh, it's the wind. I think the window kind of blows open and you hear this kind of howl of the wind, but it feels almost like it's like a woman screaming, or or a girl screaming, and it's just so subtle and so clever. And then you realize later on, when you go back and watch it again, knowing that this guy is the killer, when you hear that, it's not a howling of the wind anymore. It's a girl's scream, and you realize there was somebody in his basement when his wife was in the house, and his wife has no idea. And it's just horrifying. The idea that not only does this man have this elaborate basement under his house, but his wife probably doesn't even know about it, because she always goes away on business. I think she always goes off to London or something like that, or Stockholm or something like that. And it's just horrifying. It sends a chill down my spine every time I watch it. And Fincher is the only guy who can do that for me. I don't know. It's just, So I think there's so much in that film. Yeah.
I think when we see that kind of films and we trace them back to Seven, or trace them back to the game, or trace them back to, Fight Club. Also, he also used that kind of technique, that he also always have this kind of creepiness about when he's going to introduce a new character, when he's going to introduce your killer. That's always one of the things that he's also great in it, and he does it in a perfect way that you don't really understand that this is the killer who's standing in front of you for the entire 45 minutes. And if you're not really focused on just how things are, you will miss it. And in some movies, you realize that, okay, this is the killer from the first 10 minutes. You will realize that because that's how bad they actually convey him as a character, and how they made it so clear that this is the killer, but how can we get them? How can actually our character, or our detective, get to know him, and have the evidence and all that. If we see Fight Club, there's a huge things about how different the characters are, but at the same time they are not actually arguing on the same concept. Yeah, when we see Tyler Durden, and we see the character with Norton, fighting, when they first introduced, but they have a common thing, which is why we're doing this. So, yeah, they are fighting physically, but mentally they are the same. It just start to shift as long as we go with the movie. It starts to see, oh no, they are physically similar now, but they are different mentally. And this is where everything starts to change. And I love how he actually make that as a parallel to the entire movie.
I think you mentioned that idea of the killer standing right in front of you and us not realizing it. And in Fight Club, there is no serial killer kind of component to it, or whodunit component, but there is very much that idea of Tyler Durden is the key to figuring out all of this. He's right there in front of you, and you don't realize what he really represents. And I think that the thing I love about Fight Club is it's not the fun of watching the film; it's the fun of rewatching the film.
Yes,
I think Fight Club works when you rewatch it. It's a masterful film, obviously, on first viewing, but I love that idea that Fincher understands the fact that people rewatch films. I think a lot of people forget that. I think a lot of filmmakers forget that. A lot of filmmakers forget that we actually like to rewatch films. We don't just watch films in a cinema and then walk away and never touch them again. We rewatch films, which it sounds so obvious, but so many stories are not written that way. They're not written to have added value next time you go and watch them. Your mobile phone doesn't just have one app. Your PlayStation doesn't just have one video game installed on it. You're going to want to get multiple uses out of this thing and get maximum value out of that thing. And I can watch Fight Club, and I can, even though I know I'm not discovering something new because I've seen the film so many times, I feel like, oh, did I get that before? Did I notice that thing before? Because that feels new to me, And I get that with The Girl with Dragon Tattoo. I get that with Zodiac. I'll be like, oh, I don't think I ever clocked that that's what they were talking about in that particular moment, or that piece of evidence. I don't think I got the significance of it. And I probably did. I probably said the same thing to myself the last time. But the fact that Fincher can make me feel like I'm getting some added value every single time, not just entertainment, but actually like that my brain is working, my brain is being engaged here. I'm not just a passive viewer enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm an active participant in this investigation or in this quest or whatever. I think there's something just absolutely brilliant about that. And Fight Club is totally kind of emblematic of that.
And he's so smart about how he adapted the novel. I don't know if you read the novel.
No, I didn't know.
It is nothing like the movie. It's just the voiceover is similar. Yeah, he had the tone of the same voiceover, but when you read it, it's not as appealing as the film. So there's a lot of events. A lot of the novel was just about explaining what's going to happen, and everything is voiceover, as you know. But in the film, you're seeing the voiceover, and it's been done in a very perfect way, where he doesn't really feed you information, but he's more about telling you about what's really going on in the moment. So you're watching it. So yeah.
And just to say, actually, David Fincher is a big fan of director's commentaries. And
Okay.
if you get, I don't know how, I don't think we'll ever get a home release of Mank that isn't on Netflix, which, you know, and I don't know how director's commentaries are really ever going to work anymore now that everything is just streamed. I don't know if there'll ever be like a bonus feature or something like that embedded into, or like, you know, the way you can change settings or audio descriptions or something like that. Maybe you can put on the director's commentary audio track, who knows? But, you know, if you know, my David Fincher collection, you know, my old DVD collection of David Fincher films, right up until I think Gone Girl was the last David Fincher DVD I was able to get. It's just all every one of them has a director's commentary track on them, if I'm not mistaken, and you can learn so much about his process, and just learn so much about how to make great movies from them. So, like, highly recommend that. So you mentioned The Game. This is, I think, a Fincher film that doesn't get talked about a lot. Walk me through your love of that film and the scene in question that you're interested in.
I think, well, I saw it when I was very young, you know, and still after like maybe 25 years, I still remember it so clearly, because I think what makes it unique about that movie, and for me, is how the characters were going from one place to the other, one stage to the other, and it's about a game. You know, it's a birthday gift for a banker who's also a millionaire, and his little brother gave him a gift to, you know, for her birthday. But that gift requires that you go to several, you know, stages. It's like a game. I think what makes it unique is not just Michael Douglas' performance, but also the idea about how can someone like your brother make you so much in hell, let's say, or, you know, it takes so much power, it takes so much, you know, effort just to get to a one destination or the final destination without getting killed, without getting, you know. So it for me, it was, I think, it's just how the stage was going from one character to the other, and how in each stage you don't know really who's playing in it until you reach the end, and you know that everyone is actually participating in that. So it's like you are, as the audience and as Michael Douglas character, you are the guy who's been played all over for this 2.5 hours, you know, or 15 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So that's one of the things that really caught my attention, and how he's done it. You know, it's a 1997 movie, so a lot of the special effects weren't there. Everything was practical. So I think that's also that scene falling from, you know, from the top. It was just beautiful. It reminds me of The Spawn in 1996, how he actually fell down from the ceiling as well, when he went introduced himself as Spawn in the beginning. So, and the confrontation between the two brothers by the end, and how he's not really mad at him. He's just explaining to him why he's doing it. And now he understands why his brother went to so much trouble just to make him enjoy his birthday in a very different way than his typical banker lifestyle, which is so mundane, so routine. And he wanted to change that. You know, and he wanted to give him some kind of, you know, a taste about danger, a taste about you have to enjoy life. And it's just like some kind of a message to all the people who are working in the bank system. Get out, enjoy your life. It's not about money. I think that's kind of way about hitting him, you know, hitting that kind of message about that.
Yeah, I don't think I fully got what Fincher was trying to do in that film when I first saw it. And I don't know if I've ever seen it a second time, actually. I saw it, very young when I saw it. Not very young, but I was young when I saw it, and it was one of those kind of earlier Fincher films. I don't even know if I realized it was a David Fincher film when I first watched it. But it, I was totally in, like I was totally hooked. But I find the premise to be a very unusual one. Like, it's all just an act. It's all just staged, and you kind of realize. And I remember just feeling very kind of bewildered by that. But at the same time, I thought it must have done something right, because I stuck with it the whole way. So yeah, I don't quite fully understand my own feelings for that film, I guess. Um,
The way he explained, the way we go from one scene to the other, it's not even hinted to it. So especially when he was driving his BMW and he was shot, and you think that he's gonna die now. So some way he's in a house. So you don't know how they actually, went from that scene to that scene. It is really, exciting to see it and understand it for the second time or third time. I think it's going to be like a case study for me to see these old films and try to see what's really the meaning of it. Um, yeah, I think that's one way to put it, but it's different than Seven. It's different than Fight Club, and when you see it, it came after Seven and it came before Fight Club. So the transition, I think in that stage he was trying to see what kind of things he want to go to. He wasn't really into the crime, the mystery. Then I think after Fight Club, he started to realize that, okay, I'm into mystery and thriller and probably crime. This is where I should stick more about them. I should do more movies about this. This is where, my bread and butter. I find myself in that kind of category, in that kind of genre.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. I think that was the tipping point for him, where he realized, yeah, this is what I'm good at.
Yeah.
I can do this stuff really well. Yeah.
And I respect the way he's doing things in terms of, doing a lot of research about the places, about the characters, and how their world, and how he's going to shoot the scene, and what kind of things he's going to deal with the actors. And I heard a lot about how he's tough on set. How he's taking so many shots, more than 50 shots, 30 shots, just to get the right shot. So, and sometimes he just turn off the camera and just let them act. And when she see that they are actually embodied the characters really well, this is where he turn on the camera and he take it without them being noticed. So I know it's so hard to work with such kind of director like that, but I respect his outcome. That's the important thing.
Okay, I'm not a director, right? And I'll never try and, as much as I might be critical of some movies here and there, I always try and ground it in screenwriting, where stuff I can speak to confidently on, right? But I've always wondered, I've always been kind of, I think, it doesn't bother me because I'm not affected by it really, but the idea of Fincher doing 50 takes of the most simple shots or the most simple kind of moments or lines of dialogue, does that say more about his ability as a director not to be able to get it sooner, or the people he's working with? Because he doesn't work with bad actors. He doesn't work with weak talent. I can't think of a single David Fincher film that doesn't have an incredible cast from top to bottom, an incredible list of actors from top to bottom. Go watch the cast of Zodiac. Go look at the cast of Zodiac and tell me they're not just all, at the peak of their talents and abilities in those films, right? In that film. If he's taking 50 takes to get that one thing, or 30 takes, or even like 15 takes, right? Let's not be so dramatic. Let's say 15, right? Which is still a lot. Doesn't it speak to his inability to get what he needs rather than their inability to deliver? Because I find it very hard to believe that Brian Cox or Robert Downey Jr. or any of the other, Chloe Sevigny, Gary Oldman in Mank, yeah. Or I'm just thinking of Zodiac here, but take any of his films. Are you really telling me that they're not able to deliver? And so, I think one of the things that we think about when we talk about when we discuss Fincher is the challenges that he found with working with the studios. We know the story of how hard it was for him to make Alien 3. We know how, he's all in with Netflix now because Netflix just basically give him carte blanche to do whatever he wants, right? And that's great. And I totally understand that. I mean, why wouldn't you go to work with the people who are just going to say, yeah, we trust you implicitly? And, we've been hugely praising of Fincher and his abilities in this video, but I do think it's worth mentioning this as we come to near the end of this discussion. The idea that is that like, I don't know, again, and it'd be interesting for directors to weigh in, people who have experience directing to weigh in on this, but that seems like it's more about your obsessiveness for perfection
Exactly.
that I don't think any of us would notice. Like, that's the other thing. I don't think we would notice if the performance was done in 15 takes or 50 takes. I don't think we would notice that. Is that why these films are amazing? Because he's doing 50 takes a shot? I don't think so. I think it's great writing and great vision that he has.
Yes.
I don't think 50 takes ultimately gets us there. The other thing as well, just on that idea of obsessiveness and kind of perfection, he uses visual effects to an obsessive degree. If you ever go YouTube, Google the visual effects of Gone Girl, and you might say, well, what possible need of visual effects? Why would you need visual effects in Gone Girl? Right? Surely that film could be done without visual effects. And there are visual effects everywhere. I'm talking about making a building look bigger. I'm talking about CGIing out the windows and putting in a garden in the background. I'm talking about, just the most like obsessive details. And again, I don't know how many directors get the freedom to be able to raise a visual effects budget just so that I can have a slightly more perfect looking building, or a slightly more perfect looking decoration on the wall or something. There's a fascinating level of attention that he brings to his movies. And if that's what it takes for his movies to be as great as they are, then I'm all for it. But I also do wonder sometimes, like, is that good practice? Like, is that the sign of a great director, or is that actually the sign of maybe somebody who's indecisive, who doesn't really know fully what they want until they see it, and maybe it takes 50 takes to get for him to realize, actually, this is how I want that scene to go. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that kind of?
I think also his reputation. Every director have his own kind of reputation, and I think he wanted to be just a perfectionist, as you say. I think that, and he also kind of in a kind of way hinted to that concept that he's really a perfectionist and he wants everything to be very clear. He wanted to be just the perfect scene, the perfect acting, the perfect script. But that also means that taking a long shots or so many shots means that it's too hard to deal with you. And not every actor will be able to take that kind of time to do just one shot. And I think he's just, some kind of a propaganda sometimes, when you just say, oh, I take 30 or 50 or even 90 shots to create some kind of an image that he's this kind of perfectionist. He want to do this. Nobody did it before him, and that's why his movies are great. Like what you say, But I think it's always also about how he want to represent himself. That he's a hardworking. He doesn't really accept half acting or medium actor. He need full potential, 100% of your acting on set. I think that's what he wanted to bring, but he cannot say that. Much more about his way of shooting, so tiring them up just to get them into that kind of moment. But I'm against more than 10. I think 10 to 15, that's enough. I think that's more than enough, especially when you're dealing with Robert Downey Jr., when you're dealing with Morgan Freeman. I mean, they can
the best talent in the industry. Yeah, throughout the last how many decades. It's insane that he feels the need to do that many takes. I don't know, but maybe he's doing it. Maybe it's something he only does with maybe younger talent who might still be finding their way, or I don't know, maybe. But
I know that he's really specific about actors and how he want to choose them, especially when it came to Gone Girl, and he actually took the actress
Rosamund Pike.
Yeah, and he wanted someone who's so devilish, but it doesn't show on her face. She's mysterious. You cannot know if she's a good girl or a bad girl. Her features doesn't give you so much about it. So he wanted that, and when she came, he said, "Yeah, that's the one I want." So I think he's much more also about the design of your face, how it's looking. How does it represent for the character? That's helped so much about him, about his dedication, about choosing the actors as well.
So there's one more scene I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll do one more of yours and then we'll wrap up. It's the nightclub scene in The Social Network. So I love The Social Network so much, and this is why I think it's a great screenwriter's movie. From the beginning that this movie came out, Sorkin kept talking about this is a story as old as time itself. It's a story about two friends who become enemies. It's the oldest story in the book, and I love that idea that they knew how to sell this to audiences. This isn't about computer programmers. This isn't about Silicon Valley and the business of Silicon Valley. This isn't about Harvard students. This is purely about friendship and the collapse of friendship, and a desire for validation and a desire to be needed and all that. And no more is that scene, is that idea and that thesis kind of exemplified then in the nightclub scene in the film, where Justin Timberlake's character he's come in as kind of this, he's going to be like, I'm going to be your mentor. I'm going to show you how to live the right way, how to be a Silicon Valley, prodigy or whatever. In the nightclub scene, he's telling him this story about the guy who created Victoria's Secret. And he's telling him this whole story, this whole kind of tragic story of this guy who fell short of his potential. He could have been, I think he committed suicide years later because he only sold the company for a small fortune instead of a massive fortune that if he had held on to it, And on either side of Justin Timberlake, there are these two Victoria's Secret models. And that's how he kind of starts talking about it. And they're in this club that, it's an exclusive club. And all the waiters know Justin Timberlake and everything. And it's just the most amazing kind of wolf in sheep's clothing scene. Yeah. It's that snake oil salesman trying to get into the company, trying to get in with the and get a handle on this, and just take advantage. And he's going to be a bad influence. He's going to be the wedge that will tear this friendship apart.
Yes.
But it's such a seductive scene. The way he drags him in. He says, "I want you to be able to say, 'I'm CEO, bitch,' on his business card," And he even gets him those business cards later. But what's so interesting is that you can barely hear him because of the music, and you really have to struggle. And I think that's so brilliantly done, that this idea of whether it was intentional or not, it's a scene that you kind of sometimes almost need the subtitles on just to be able to understand it. And I remember watching the movie theater and thinking that, it must be the sound mix in the movie theater, until I watched it at home and saw the same sound mix. You can tell that you are struggling to hear, because that's what Mark Zuckerberg he's struggling to hear him.
Yes.
But to me, that only serves that only highlights further how seductive the guy really is in his kind of pitch, because I should be tuning out. I should be like, it's too much hassle trying to listen to him. But no, I really want to listen to him, because he's telling me something I want to hear. He's luring me in. And it's such a brilliant, brilliant scene in terms of just, it just sums up the theme of the film overall. You want validation for who you are? I'll get you validation. You want to be rich? I'll get you rich. It's not about being rich, but it's about having the things that being rich can bring you, like power and respect, and people know your name. and you're not just the guy that people hire. You're the person who hires everyone else. You're the CEO. And it and what's so funny is Andrew Garfield is his character is the same, because he keeps talking in the film about how he wants validation from his father. Oh, my father's going to love this. My father's going to be so proud of me and all that. My father's going to hate me after this. My father won't talk to me anymore. You realize that they both want exactly the same thing. They just have different opinions of how to go about it.
Yeah.
And one was seduced by the dark side, let's say, and the other kind of held on to his principles a little bit more, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but yeah, I just think that scene is just it's not the best scene in the movie for me. I think there's other scenes that are just like really great scenes. They're almost like action movies with typing. But that's the scene for me that's the screenwriter's scene in that movie. What's your final?
I think with Fight Club, if we say that they're also looking for validation, the character of Edward Norton actually looking for validation for he want to have a purpose for life, and then comes Tyler Durden. You don't need purpose of life. You make the purpose by yourself. It's like it's the same kind of way of taking him and sucking him into the real kind of way, and not being just spending all your money on materialistics and just being shallow. You need to be more than that. You need to disattach yourself from the real world and go to what we call is the real world, which is Tyler Durden kind of world, and where he start to live in this abandoned warehouse or abandoned house, and he start to wear simple clothes instead of Gucci or as they put it on, with and they're all, and he's Edward Norton's character was trying to get some kind of recognition at work, with his boss, for when we first meet him, and how he's actually so obedient. Then once he starts to have this hangout with Tyler Durden, he starts to have this much more power in terms of personality. He starts to be much more independent, and this is where he starts to say, okay, I will I will get my revenge on my boss. And this is where he start to punch himself, and he start to ask for not just validation now, but he's going to pay for him for the medicals. He's going to pay for he's going to sue him. So I think the same concept is actually with the network, with the social network. So if we take that as a parallel, that actually is so similar to every kind of characters that David Fincher really likes to have. Is they're both, and
he does have very seductive characters in his films.
Yeah.
Gone Girl as well. I mean, she can make anybody do anything, and Rosamund Pike's character can make anybody do anything. She's so kind of she's able to just kind of get into your head, and it's she can mess up your life, and it's and you see it in even in the game, in the fact that the only reason Michael Douglas's character is even going along with any of this stuff is because the characters are so believable in the way that they're able to kind of drag them along. The girl with dragon tattoo. I mean, it's the idea that they're standing right there in front of you the whole time. You don't see it. Like these people, they have their ways.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's your final scene that you'd like to talk about?
I think with the Curious Case of Benjamin Button was the scene where Brad Pitt, in his youth, and he's actually waiting in the hospital to get the allowance or the approval to go and see Kate Blanchett after she got the accident, and how the story structure, and if how he's telling that story, and how it's like 3 acts in one scene. It was done perfectly, and why I love it, because it shows so much about this guy knowing so much about this girl, and what, like along the movie, that she will take care of him, like the way he take care. It's like what comes around goes around. So it's really a good circle to have these two characters together from the first to the end of the movie.
Yeah, Benjamin Button is a movie that I again, something I've only seen once, but something that I have a lot of respect for that film. I don't think I was a huge fan of the film, but when I went to Paramount Studios once, and one of the people there gave me a gift of the Benjamin Button artwork book. Apparently, they were trying to get rid of them at the Oscars, and nobody wanted to take them because they were such big, heavy books. And it's a beautiful book. It's I think you might be able to buy them as well. It's a beautiful artwork book, and it's got all these incredible kind of designs but it's not just photographs or anything like that. I mean, it's like you can they're almost like real sketches on the page. You know, you almost feel like that's David Fincher's kind of notes there on the corner of the page. Brilliantly designed book. But that kind of really made me respect, I think, Benjamin Button a lot more than I think the first time. Maybe I need to watch that film again. But yeah, you are right. I don't think I've ever studied the structure of that film. And yeah, it does have that beautiful kind of just that kind of wheel is always turning kind of approach. And I'd be very interested actually to see how the story structure of that movie kind of plays out. I need to kind of do an analysis on that.
Yeah. It will be a very interesting topic to talk about how that screenwriting was happening and how they actually did it, because your character is getting from very old to be an infant. So it's not like it's the opposite side of you're going as in your full youth, your full strength, then you start to get older. So it's like the vice versa. And the way the characters are interacting with each other along, the time. So there's two different parallel universes colliding with each other, but they're actually in a different time level. This is going to be young, and she's going to be old. So how they are actually going to meet in the middle. And that scene was the only one time that they actually met. So it was really good to see that kind of how it was playing.
Yeah. And Cate Blanchett as well. Has Cate Blanchett worked with Fincher since? I don't know if she has.
I don't know. I don't think so.
No. Yeah, I could talk about David Fincher forever because there's so many. I mean, it says something that the only thing I can be critical of with David Fincher is just his philosophy of doing lots of takes, which has no impact on me as a viewer. So I don't even know why I would complain about that. But I think it speaks volumes about the immense talent and quality that he's able to bring to every project. And I think, you know what? There are filmmakers I used to get excited about. I don't really get excited about them anymore when I hear, because I've kind of just become a bit bored of their work maybe sometimes. But Fincher is one of those guys I still to this day can't wait to see what he does next. Mank is a film that I was going to talk about some stuff on that, but I realized that there's no one scene in Mank that just jumps out at me as like, this is like the scene that blew me away or anything. I wasn't blown away by the film, but I love that the film exists. And I think it's worth doing a video about Mank all on its own eventually, as I'm sure we'll end up doing one about all of Fincher's different films. But yeah, so I mean, I think I need to rewatch Mank and then maybe talk a bit more about it. But Asim, thanks very much for chiming in today, and we'll catch up again next week with another chat. Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net. You can find some blog posts and recommended reading. You can also, I believe, check out the script for The Social Network on our blog. Just hit thescriptdepartment.net and you'll find all the details there. Also, hit us up on social media. Just hit the links in the description, and also subscribe to our podcast. Just search for The Script Department wherever you get your podcasts, and give the video a like if you found anything here useful, and leave a comment of your favorite scenes in Fincher's films. Thanks very much, and we'll be back tomorrow with another video.